Sometimes love doesn't announce itself with fireworks or romantic music. Sometimes it whispers through the cracks of someone else's cruelty, growing stronger in the silence that follows rejection. What happens when a man witnesses a woman's heart being shattered in public? And, in that moment of her deepest humiliation, he sees not her brokenness, but her incredible worth. This is the story of Marcus and Elena, a tale that proves sometimes the most beautiful beginnings emerge from the most painful endings. It's about a man who offered everything he had to a woman who thought she had nothing left to give, and how two broken souls found wholeness in each other's arms. Get ready for a journey that will restore your faith in unexpected love and the power of seeing someone's true value when the rest of the world has turned away. Elena Martinez had always believed that coffee shops were safe spaces. The gentle hum of conversation, the smell of fresh bread, and the soft jazz playing in the background created a cocoon of comfort that made difficult conversations seem less threatening. She had chosen this particular cafe on Fifth Street specifically because it felt warm and welcoming, with its exposed brick walls and vintage furniture that invited people to linger. She thought it would be the perfect place to have the conversation she had been building up courage for over the past 3 weeks. She arrived 15 minutes early, as was her habit, and chose a corner table where she could see the entrance. Her hands trembled slightly as she ordered her usual lavender latte, the steam from the cup creating small clouds that seemed to mirror the anxiety building in her chest. Elena had practiced this conversation in her bathroom mirror dozens of times, each rehearsal making her more confident that today would be the day she finally told David how she felt. David Chun had been her best friend since college, and over the past year, Elena had watched their friendship slowly transform into something deeper, at least on her side. The way he laughed at her terrible jokes, how he remembered her favorite order at every restaurant they visited, and the gentle way he touched her arm when he was making a point during their long conversations had convinced her that maybe, just maybe, he felt the same way. She had bought a new dress for this occasion, a soft blue sundress that brought out her eyes and made her feel confident and beautiful. Her sister Rosa had helped her curl her long black hair, creating gentle waves that framed her face perfectly. Everything about this day was supposed to be special, the beginning of something wonderful. When David walked through the cafe door at exactly 2 o'clock, Elena felt her heart skip in the familiar way it had started doing whenever she saw him. He was tall and lean, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and a smile that had always made her feel like she was the most interesting person in the room. He spotted her immediately and waved, making his way through the crowded cafe with the easy confidence that had first attracted her to him in their sophomore literature class. They chatted easily for the first 20 minutes, falling into the comfortable rhythm that had defined their friendship for years. David told her about his new job at the marketing firm, how his boss was demanding but fair, and how he was finally feeling like he was building the career he had always wanted. Elena shared stories from her work at the local library, describing the children's reading program she had started and how rewarding it felt to see kids discover their love for books. But, as the conversation continued, Elena noticed something different about David. He seemed distracted, checking his phone more frequently than usual, and glancing toward the door every few minutes. His responses to her stories were shorter than normal, and she could sense an energy about him that felt both excited and nervous. Finally, after working up every ounce of courage she possessed, Elena took a deep breath and reached across the table to touch David's hand. "David, there's something I've been wanting to talk to you about. Something important." David looked up from his phone, and, for a moment, Elena saw something in his eyes that she couldn't quite interpret. It wasn't the warm attention she was used to, but something more complicated, almost apologetic. "Actually, Elena, I'm so glad you said that because I have something important to tell you too." His voice carried an excitement that made Elena's heart race with anticipation. This was it. This was the moment she had been dreaming about. "I know we've been spending a lot of time together lately, and I hope you know how much your friendship means to me," David began, and Elena felt her smile grow wider. "You've been such an incredible friend, especially during this transition period in my life. And I wanted you to be one of the first to know about something amazing that's happened." Elena nodded enthusiastically, her mind racing with possibilities. Maybe he was going to tell her about a promotion that would allow them to plan a future together. Maybe he had been offered a position in the city, meaning he wouldn't have to move away as he had mentioned before. "I've met someone," David said, his face lighting up with a joy that Elena had never seen before. "Her name is Sarah, and she's incredible. We met at the gym 3 weeks ago, and, Elena, I think she might be the one. I've never felt this way about anyone before." The words hit Elena like ice water. The smile froze on her face as her brain struggled to process what she was hearing. 3 weeks ago. The same 3 weeks she had been building up courage for this conversation. While she had been falling deeper in love with him, he had been falling in love with someone else entirely. "She's a graphic designer, and she's funny and smart and beautiful," David continued, completely oblivious to the devastation he was causing. "I know this is probably weird to hear from your friend, but I had to tell someone, and you're the person I trust most in the world. I actually invited her to meet us here because I really want you two to meet. I think you'll love her as much as I do." Elena felt the world tilt beneath her feet. He had invited this other woman here, to what Elena had planned as the most important conversation of her life. She was going to have to sit here and smile and pretend to be happy while meeting the woman who had stolen the heart she thought was slowly becoming hers. "She should be here any minute," David said, checking his phone again. "I hope that's okay. I know I should have asked first, but I was just so excited to introduce you two." Elena opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Her throat felt tight, and she could feel tears building behind her eyes. She blinked rapidly, trying to maintain some composure, but the pain in her chest was growing stronger by the second. It was then that she noticed a woman approaching their table. She was everything Elena was not: tall where Elena was petite, blonde where Elena was dark, confident in a way that seemed effortless and natural. She wore a designer jacket and moved with the kind of grace that drew attention from every person in the cafe. "Sarah." David jumped up from his chair, his face transforming with pure happiness. He wrapped the woman in a hug that lasted several seconds longer than Elena could bear to watch. "You must be Elena," Sarah said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. Her voice was warm and friendly, which somehow made everything worse. It would have been easier if she had been cold or rude, giving Elena something concrete to dislike about her. Instead, Sarah seemed genuinely nice, which only highlighted how foolish Elena had been to think she ever had a chance. "David has told me so much about you. He says you're his best friend and that you're absolutely wonderful. I've been dying to meet the woman who helped him become the amazing man he is today." Elena shook Sarah's hand and managed to whisper, "Nice to meet you too," though the words felt like they were being scraped from her throat with sandpaper. As the couple sat down together, Elena watched David transform into someone she barely recognized. He was animated and funny in a way she had never seen before, constantly touching Sarah's arm or hand, looking at her with an intensity that made Elena feel like she was intruding on something private. Sarah was equally smitten, laughing at David's stories and sharing her own with an ease that spoke of two people completely comfortable with each other. They had inside jokes already, references to conversations, and experiences that Elena wasn't part of. In just 3 weeks, they had built a connection that Elena realized she had never actually had with David, despite years of friendship. Elena sat through 30 of the most excruciating minutes of her life, nodding and smiling at appropriate moments while feeling like her heart was being torn apart piece by piece. Every laugh David shared with Sarah, every private glance between them, every casual touch felt like confirmation of how completely Elena had misread their entire relationship. She had thought the lingering looks meant something romantic when they had simply been friendly. She had interpreted his thoughtfulness as signs of growing love when they were just the actions of a good friend. All those moments she had treasured as evidence of their special connection had been nothing more than her own wishful thinking projected onto normal friendship behaviors. When Sarah excused herself to use the restroom, Elena thought she might finally have a chance to escape, to claim a sudden headache or emergency, and flee from this nightmare. But David immediately leaned forward, his eyes bright with excitement. "Isn't she amazing?" he said. "Elena, I can't believe how lucky I am. She's everything I've ever wanted in a partner. Smart, funny, ambitious, beautiful. And The way she looks at me, like I'm the only person in the world who matters. I've never experienced anything like this before. Each word was another nail in the coffin of Elena's hopes. She realized that not only had she completely misunderstood their relationship, but David had never even considered the possibility that she might have romantic feelings for him. To him, she was simply his good friend Elena, someone he cared about, but never in the way she had hoped. David, Elena began, her voice barely above a whisper. I need to tell you something. But Sarah was already returning from the restroom, sliding back into her seat with a smile that lit up her entire face. Sorry about that. David was just telling me about your job at the library. That sounds so fulfilling. I've always admired people who work in education and literacy. Elena looked around the cafe, suddenly, noticing that several other patrons had been watching their table. She realized that her devastation must be written clearly across her face, that she was probably providing entertainment for strangers who could see exactly what was happening even if David couldn't. At a table near the window, she noticed a man sitting alone with a laptop and a cup of coffee that had clearly gone cold long ago. Unlike the other observers who seemed amused by the drama unfolding, this man's expression was one of genuine concern. He had dark hair and kind eyes, and when their gazes met briefly, Elena saw something that looked like understanding and compassion. But she couldn't focus on strangers when her entire world was crumbling around her. She needed to get out of this cafe before she completely broke down in front of David and Sarah. She needed to preserve whatever dignity she had left. I'm sorry, Elena said suddenly, standing up so quickly that her chair scraped loudly against the floor. I just remembered I have somewhere I need to be. Already. David looked disappointed. But we just got here. And I was hoping you and Sarah could spend more time getting to know each other. Maybe next time. Elena managed, grabbing her purse and backing away from the table. It was nice meeting you, Sarah. You too, Sarah replied, looking genuinely sorry to see her go. I hope we can hang out again soon. Elena nodded and turned toward the door, walking as quickly as she could without actually running. She could feel David's confused gaze following her, but she couldn't turn back. If she looked at him again, if she saw that happy, oblivious expression on his face, she would completely fall apart. She made it exactly 3 steps outside the cafe before the tears started falling. All the emotion she had been holding back for the past hour came pouring out in ugly, gut-wrenching sobs that she couldn't control. She leaned against the brick wall of the building next door, covering her face with her hands as she cried for the relationship that had never existed except in her imagination. The worst part wasn't just that David didn't love her back. The worst part was realizing how completely she had deceived herself. She had spent months building up a fantasy based on nothing more than wishful thinking and misinterpreted kindness. She had convinced herself that she knew David better than anyone else. But the truth was that she had never really known him at all. If she had, she would have realized that he was capable of the kind of all-consuming love he clearly felt for Sarah, and that he had never looked at her with even a fraction of that intensity. Elena stood against that wall, crying harder than she had since her father's funeral 5 years earlier, feeling completely foolish and utterly alone. She had lost not only her romantic hopes, but also her best friend, because how could she continue to be close to David knowing how she really felt about him? How could she watch him build a life with Sarah, attend their engagement party, dance at their wedding, and pretend to be happy for them? She felt like she was mourning not just the loss of a relationship that had never existed, but the loss of her own judgment and self-respect. How had she become someone who could so completely misread another person's feelings? How had she allowed herself to become so vulnerable to someone who had never even considered her as anything more than a friend? As she cried on that busy street, with people walking past and giving her sympathetic or curious glances, Elena felt more exposed and humiliated than she ever had in her life. This was supposed to be her moment of triumph, the day her real life with David began. Instead, it had become the day she learned exactly how little she actually meant to the person she loved most in the world. Elena didn't know how long she had been standing against that wall, tears streaming down her face, when she heard a gentle voice beside her. "Excuse me, are you all right?" She looked up to see the man from the cafe, the one who had been sitting alone with the laptop. Up close, She could see that he had warm brown eyes and a face that showed genuine concern rather than curiosity. He was holding a packet of tissues, which he offered to her without any expectation or demand for explanation. "I'm sorry," Elena said, accepting the tissues and wiping her face. "I'm sure I look terrible. I don't usually fall apart in public like this." "You don't look terrible," the man said quietly. "You look like someone who just had her heart broken, and that's nothing to be ashamed of." Elena was surprised by his directness, but also oddly comforted by it. Most people would have offered platitudes or pretended not to notice her obvious distress. This stranger was acknowledging her pain without trying to minimize it or fix it. "I'm Marcus," he said, not moving closer but positioning himself between Elena and the street so that passing pedestrians couldn't gawk at her as openly. "And I couldn't help but notice what happened in there. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but cafe acoustics don't leave much room for privacy. You saw all of that." Elena felt a fresh wave of humiliation wash over her. Bad enough that she had made such a fool of herself in front of David and Sarah, but now she learned that strangers had witnessed her devastation as well. "I saw a woman gather incredible courage to put herself in a vulnerable position," Marcus said simply. "And I saw her handle a really painful situation with more grace than most people could manage. There's nothing shameful about what happened to you." Elena stared at him, surprised by his perspective. She had felt like such a fool, so pathetic and obvious in her feelings, but Marcus was describing her actions as brave rather than stupid. "I completely misread everything," she said, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "I thought he felt the same way about me. I built up this whole fantasy in my head based on absolutely nothing. How could I have been so wrong about everything?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider his words carefully. "From what I observed, you didn't misread anything malicious. Your friend seems like a decent person who genuinely cares about you, just not in the way you hoped. Sometimes people can be wonderful and still not be right for us, or we for them. That doesn't make your feelings invalid or foolish." Elena found herself really looking at Marcus for the first time. He appeared to be around her age, maybe 30 or so, with dark hair that looked like he had been running his hands through it, and clothes that were nice but lived in. There was something solid and reliable about his presence that made her feel slightly less like the world was spinning out of control. "Were you waiting for someone at the cafe?" Elena asked, suddenly, realizing that her breakdown might have interrupted his own plans. Marcus shook his head. "I work remotely most days, and I like the background noise when I'm writing. I'm a freelance journalist, and coffee shop conversations actually help me focus. Though I have to admit, I had trouble concentrating once I saw what was unfolding at your table." "Great. So I ruined your workday too," Elena said, attempting a weak smile. "Actually, you made me remember something important," Marcus replied. "Sometimes the most significant moments in our lives happen when we least expect them, and usually they're not the ones we planned for." Elena wasn't sure what he meant by that, but before she could ask, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from David. "Are you okay? You left so suddenly. Sarah and I are worried about you." The thoughtfulness of the message, which would have warmed her heart just an hour ago, now felt like salt in a wound. Of course David was worried about her. He cared about her the way he would care about any friend who seemed upset. The realization that his concern was genuine, but entirely platonic somehow, made everything hurt worse. Marcus seemed to notice her expression change as she read the message. "Bad news. Just my friend checking on me," Elena said, showing him the text. "He has no idea why I got upset. He probably thinks I'm having some kind of breakdown over work stress or something. Are you going to tell him?" Elena considered this. The thought of explaining her feelings to David, of watching his face change from concern to understanding to that terrible awkward pity, made her stomach turn. "I don't think so. What would be the point? It would just make everything weird between us, and I'd lose the friendship too." "That's probably wise," Marcus said. "Though I have to say, if he's as good a friend as he seems, he might be more understanding than you think." "Maybe," Elena said, though she didn't believe it. "But I don't think I can handle his understanding right now. I think I just need to figure out how to get over this and move on." "That sounds like a healthy approach," Marcus said. "And, for what it's worth, from an outside perspective, you seem like someone who has a lot to offer." This guy's loss is going to be someone else's incredible gain. Elena looked at him with surprise. You don't even know me. I know that you have the courage to take emotional risks, Marcus said. I know that you handle disappointment with dignity. I know that you're thoughtful enough to worry about your friends' feelings even when you're hurting. Those are pretty significant qualities. Elena felt something shift slightly in her chest. Not healing, exactly, but maybe the first tiny crack that might eventually let some light in. For the past hour, she had felt like a complete failure as a person, someone who was so fundamentally flawed that she couldn't even accurately read another person's feelings. Marcus was offering her a different narrative, one where she was brave rather than foolish, thoughtful rather than pathetic. Thank you, she said, and meant it. I needed to hear that, even if I don't quite believe it yet. Belief takes time, Marcus said. But facts are facts, and the facts are that you're a kind, brave person who deserves better than settling for someone who can't appreciate what he has right in front of him. They stood in comfortable silence for a few moments, watching people walk by on the busy street. Elena was surprised to find that she felt calmer than she had since leaving the cafe. There was something soothing about Marcus's presence, the way he didn't try to rush her through her emotions or offer quick fixes for her pain. I should probably head home, Elena finally said. I need to figure out how to face the world tomorrow and pretend like my entire life plan didn't just explode. Where do you live? Marcus asked, then quickly added, I mean, do you have a way to get home safely? You seem pretty shaken up, and I'd feel better knowing you didn't have to navigate public transportation or drive while you're upset. Elena realized she hadn't even thought about the practical matter of getting home. She had walked to the cafe, planning to take her time, and maybe do some window shopping afterward to celebrate what she had hoped would be the beginning of her romantic relationship with David. The idea of that slow, happy walk she had planned made her want to start crying again. I walked here, she said. It's about 20 minutes. I'll be fine. Marcus looked uncertain. Are you sure? I know we just met, but I could walk with you if you'd like company. Or call you a cab. I just don't think you should be alone right now. Elena was touched by his concern, but also slightly wary. She had just had her judgment about men completely upended. How could she trust her instincts about this stranger, no matter how kind he seemed? Marcus seemed to understand her hesitation. I get that you don't know me, he said. And you have no reason to trust a random guy you just met on the street. But I have two sisters, and I've been where you are right now. Sometimes having someone walk beside you, even quietly, can make the difference between making it home safely and falling apart completely. There was something in his voice that convinced Elena he was being genuine. Maybe it was the way he mentioned his sisters, or the fact that he seemed to understand her wariness without taking offense to it. Or maybe she was just too emotionally exhausted to overthink it. Okay, she said. But I'm warning you, I'm probably going to be terrible company. I don't need company, Marcus said simply. I just want to make sure you get home safely. They started walking, and Marcus was true to his word. He didn't try to fill the silence with cheerful chatter or advice about getting over heartbreak. He simply walked beside her, occasionally pointing out interesting architecture or dogs they passed, giving her space to process what had happened while making sure she didn't feel completely alone. About halfway to her apartment, Elena's phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from David. She stared at the screen, paralyzed by indecision. You don't have to answer that, Marcus said gently. He's going to keep calling until I pick up, Elena said. He's worried. And he's not the type of person who can just let it go when someone he cares about seems upset. Do you want to talk to him? Elena considered this. Part of her desperately wanted to hear David's voice, to have him comfort her the way he always had when she was upset. But another part of her knew that his comfort would come from a place of friendship, and accepting it would require her to hide the real reason for her distress. I should probably get it over with, she said, and answered the phone. Elena, thank God. I've been so worried about you. What happened? You seemed fine, and then you just ran out of there. Are you okay? Hearing the genuine concern in David's voice made Elena's eyes fill with tears again, but she managed to keep her voice steady. I'm fine, David. I just remembered something urgent I needed to take care of. That seemed like more than just remembering an errand, David said. Elena, you know you can tell me anything, right? Whatever's going on, I want to help. The irony was crushing. David was offering to help her with a problem that he had unknowingly created, and The only way he could actually help would be to feel something for her that he clearly didn't, and probably never would. Really, I'm okay, Elena lied. I'm sorry if I worried you, and Sarah? I hope I didn't ruin your afternoon. You didn't ruin anything, David said. Sarah really liked you, by the way. She said she hopes you two can be friends. She knows how important you are to me. Each well-intentioned word made Elena feel worse. David wanted his girlfriend and his best friend to be friends, completely unaware that he was asking Elena to befriend the woman who had everything she wanted. That sounds nice, Elena managed. Listen, David, I'm almost home, and I'm really tired. Can we talk tomorrow? Of course, David said. But, Elena, if you need anything at all, you know I'm here for you, right? I know, Elena whispered. Thank you. She hung up the phone and immediately started crying again. Marcus wordlessly offered her another tissue and continued walking beside her without comment. He's such a good person, Elena said through her tears. That somehow makes it worse. I can't even hate him for breaking my heart because he has no idea he did it. Good people can still cause pain without meaning to, Marcus said. Intent doesn't always lessen impact. How do I get over someone who's been my best friend for years? Elena asked. How do I just stop loving someone who's woven into every part of my life? I don't think you stop loving people, Marcus said thoughtfully. I think you learn to love them differently. It's painful and it takes time, but it's possible. Have you ever had to do that? Elena asked. Marcus was quiet for several steps. Yes, he finally said. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was also one of the most important. Sometimes loving someone means accepting that you can't have them the way you want them. They had reached Elena's building, a modest apartment complex with a small garden in front. Elena realized that she wasn't ready for this conversation to end. Marcus had been the only bright spot in what had otherwise been the worst day she could remember, and the thought of going up to her empty apartment to replay the cafe scene over and over in her head felt overwhelming. Would you like to come up for coffee? She asked, then immediately felt stupid. I mean, I know you probably have things to do, and we just met, and I'm obviously a mess right now. Marcus smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him. I would love coffee, he said, but only if you're sure you want company. Sometimes after something like this, people need space to process. I think if I'm alone right now, I'm just going to spiral into feeling sorry for myself, Elena admitted. And you've been so kind to me today. I'd like to return the favor, if you'll let me. In that case, Marcus said, I'd be honored to accept. Elena's apartment was small but cozy, filled with bookshelves that reached from floor to ceiling and decorated with plants that she had somehow managed to keep alive despite her busy schedule. Marcus looked around with genuine interest as she bustled around the kitchen, grateful to have something to do with her hands while she tried to process the surreal turn her day had taken. You really do work at a library, Marcus observed, scanning the impressive collection of books that dominated her living space. These aren't just for show. Guilty as charged, Elena said, filling her coffee maker with water. I'm one of those people who can't resist bringing books home, even though I have access to thousands of them at work. There's something about owning them that feels different than just borrowing them. I understand that completely, Marcus said, stopping in front of a shelf devoted entirely to poetry. A book you own becomes part of your life in a way that a borrowed book can't. You can write in the margins, fold down pages, come back to favorite passages whenever you need them. Elena was surprised by how well he articulated something she had never been able to explain to people who thought her book collecting was excessive. Exactly. My sister always tells me I'm wasting money buying books when I can check them out for free, but it's not the same thing. Your sister doesn't understand the relationship between a reader and their personal library, Marcus said. These books tell the story of who you are and who you've been. They're like a map of your intellectual and emotional journey. Elena paused in her coffee preparations to really look at him. Most people saw her book collection as evidence that she spent too much time reading instead of living. But Marcus was treating it like something worthy of respect and understanding. You're a reader too, she said. It wasn't a question. Guilty, Marcus admitted. My apartment looks a lot like this, except with fewer plants and more coffee stains on everything. What kind of writing do you do? Elena asked, settling into the familiar rhythm of making coffee. The routine was soothing. giving her something normal to focus on while her emotional world remained in chaos. Mostly feature articles for magazines and websites, Marcus said. Human interest stories, profiles of interesting people, occasionally some travel writing when I can get the assignments. I like writing about real people and real experiences. That sounds fascinating, Elena said, and meant it. What kind of people do you write about? Marcus settled onto her small couch, looking comfortable in a way that surprised Elena. Most strangers seemed stiff and uncertain in her space, but Marcus appeared genuinely at ease. All kinds, he said. Last month I wrote about a woman in her 70s who started a nonprofit to teach elderly people how to use technology so they could video chat with their grandchildren. The month before that, I profiled a guy who quit his job as an accountant to become a professional sandcastle builder. A professional sandcastle builder? Elena found herself smiling despite everything that had happened. That's a real job? Apparently so, Marcus said. He makes more money than I do, which is both inspiring and slightly depressing. Elena laughed, a real laugh that surprised her. She hadn't expected to find anything funny today, but there was something about Marcus's dry sense of humor that caught her off guard in the best possible way. You have a great laugh, Marcus said simply, and Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. I don't feel like I have much to laugh about today, she admitted, bringing 2 mugs of coffee over to the couch. Today was hard, Marcus agreed, accepting the mug gratefully. But it wasn't entirely bad. You learned something important about yourself and about your friendship with David. That knowledge is going to serve you well, even if it hurts right now. Elena curled up in the corner of the couch, pulling her legs underneath her. What did I learn about myself? That I'm capable of completely deluding myself about another person's feelings. You learned that you're brave enough to take emotional risks, Marcus said. You learned that you can handle disappointment with grace. You learned that you have the capacity for deep feelings. Those are all valuable things to know about yourself. Elena sipped her coffee and studied Marcus's face. You're very kind, she said. But you don't have to try to make me feel better about making a fool of myself. I'm not trying to make you feel better, Marcus said honestly. I'm trying to tell you what I observed. There's a difference. What do you mean? Marcus set down his coffee mug and turned to face her more directly. I mean that I watched you gather incredible courage to be vulnerable with someone you care about. I watched you handle rejection with dignity, even when it was clearly devastating. And I watched you worry about your friend's feelings and the comfort of a stranger even while you were in pain. Those aren't the actions of someone who should feel ashamed. Elena felt tears threatening again, but this time they weren't entirely from sadness. There was something healing about hearing her actions described as brave instead of foolish, dignified instead of pathetic. Why are you being so nice to me? She asked. You don't even know me. Marcus was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider his answer carefully. Because I've been where you are, he said finally. And because I recognize something in you that I think you don't see in yourself yet. What do you recognize? Someone who's been undervalued, Marcus said simply. Someone who's been giving more than she's receiving, probably for a long time. Elena felt like Marcus had looked directly into her soul and seen something she had been trying not to acknowledge. Her relationship with David had always been somewhat unequal. She was the one who remembered his favorite foods, who listened to his work problems, who made time in her schedule when he needed to talk. He was a good friend, but their friendship had always revolved more around his needs and his life than hers. How could you possibly know that? Elena asked. Because of how shocked you seem that someone would take care of you for a change, Marcus said gently. You keep thanking me for basic human kindness like it's some extraordinary gift. That tells me you're not used to being taken care of. Elena stared at him, unsure whether to feel seen or exposed. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who's been paying attention, Marcus said. And I have been paying attention. Why? Elena asked the question that had been nagging at her since Marcus first approached her outside the cafe. Marcus smiled, but there was something almost shy about it. Honestly, because I thought you were beautiful.